A point came when God saw the need to appoint another functionary that will represent his interest on the face of the earth. Because when you study the government of God, you will discover that is a very organized structure, and the idea behind that government is to have entities that know him by experience, entities that worship him, and entities that facilitates his will or agenda. These are the three major things that characterizes the government of Elohim. Because before creation began, God was. I tell people all the time that everything we know about God is captured within the syllables of him as creator. Whatever he was doing before he began creation, we are not permitted to come into that depth of knowledge. But it's important for us to know that God was before creation began. And there were many engagements that defined the civilization of God in himself before he found it necessary to begin to create other entities to participate in that civilization. And when God decided, on account of his benevolence, to bring other entities that he had to create because there were none anywhere, to come into that fellowship, he had threefold agenda that it will be known. In fact, Jesus was speaking, he said, this is life eternal. That means any being that has the opportunity to participate in existence, what defines the essence of the existence of that being is his knowledge of God. So he said life is not breath, because there are realms where beings don't breathe. It's only mortals that breathe to sustain the life of the soul. And a point comes when you are clothed with your celestial body and you will no longer need breath to survive, because there are realms beyond oxygen. So Jesus said, in case you want to understand life from the zenith of life, he said life is the knowledge of God that you have. And knowledge in this context is the experience, the depth of the experience of God that you have. So one of the things that defines the relevance of creatures that participate in God's civilization is the depth of intimacy that they share with God, the experience of God that they have. And then the second thing that gives value to our creation is the depth of our worship of God. And I tell people, worship is not a song, but you can worship through singing. Because when you study the word worship, the first time it was used in scripture, nobody was singing. In Genesis 22 verse 5, Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and he said, I'm going yonder to worship with a young lad. And so if you understand worship, you discover that worship is actually a heart posture of adoration and yieldedness to the dictates of God. And so when a creature comes to a point where he knows God by experience, the natural byproduct of that knowledge is worship. Because now that he has known God, the promptings of God will be awoken in his spirit. And on the strength of that, he will have no choice but to adore him, because the glory and the ecstasy that comes out of God is beyond comprehension. That is why even the elders that live in the throne room, day and night, they fall on their faces. They never get used to him. Because every time you look upon him, you see other dimensions. And so when a man begins to experience God, worship is the natural byproduct. He adores him, and then he falls on his faces. That's a testimony of surrender. Whatever is your desire, that becomes the meaning of my life. And so this is what defines the civilization of God. That creatures know him, they worship him, and then he can entrust them with his will. So they facilitate that will. Because every government has an agenda.